Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. So finally, we got some good news, right? The last couple of months, we've been reporting a lot on, Spence and Crawford. These guys are agreeing to things. Then, someone decides, okay, it's time to put ink to paper. They don't want to sign. It's been mostly coming from Crawford's end. And I think what's causing a lot of problems is I think Crawford knew he was the B-side in this. But for Spence, he was doing, in some of his past fights, a lot of 50-50 splits. And I know why he was doing that. He was doing that so he can make sure he got the fight, so he could challenge for the title and win the title. Now he has all three. So he has really majority of the bargaining chips. So going into negotiations, Crawford should have been more, a 70-30, 60-40 split. But Crawford's like, you crazy? You were giving these guys 50-50 of everything. I come along, all of my accolades, all of my accomplishments, and I get it. You have 3 belts. But there's no way in the world you can give those guys 50-50 and think I'm going to take 70-30 or 60-40. Now, I think Earl Spence earned the right to get a 70-30, 60-40 fight. But it is what it is, okay? So they finally got beyond those sticking points, okay? And the fight now, they're just trying to figure out if it's going to be, I think, first week of November, second or third week. But the thing about it is, the fact that they're working the undercard, and they're going to put Stanley Eunice in there. Stanley Eunice is available. Now, for those of you who don't know who Amantis Stanley Eunice is, that is must-see TV. Now, who's going to be his opponent? I don't know. Man, I'm praying they put Thurman in there with him. Or maybe Boots Ennis, but they're not going to risk putting Stanley Eunice in there to possibly lose. They're not going to do that. If they're going to put him in with someone who he can lose, it's going to be a PBC fighter. But they're not going to put him in there with somewhere to risk him taking an L. All right? So we can just forget about that. But I like Stanley Eunice. I think Stanley Eunice is a problem for anybody. But we'll see what they do with the undercard. There are some rumors about Keith Thurman being on there. There were some rumors about Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis, that rumor, is my understanding, is dead in the water. And if Boots Ennis was a PBC fighter, he'd be on there. But he's not. And that's something that we all have to keep in mind. He is not a PBC fighter. This is going to be pretty much a PBC card here. Okay? So it is what it is. The one piece I wasn't able to find out is if Terrence Crawford has signed to PBC now. He may just go out here and roll his dice and just try to do, a one-fight deal with this network, a one-fight deal with this network, a one-fight deal with this promoter. He may just try to do that. I mean, he can. He's a brand. He's a big name. So he probably roll a dice on himself. And in my opinion, if he can do that for 3 fights, he'll probably make more money than he's ever made across his career. Because we've seen it happen with the Floyd Mayweather and everything else. Now, I personally anticipate Crawford and Spence having, 2 to 3 fights. Okay? Especially if it ends up being 1-1. So that's how I see it. But to dig into it a little bit deeper, I personally think Crawford is going to win the fight. I think the fight is very close. I always say it's a 50-50. These are the 2 number ones. There's no A and B, 1 and 2. No, it's 2 number ones battling for the undisputed distinction. But let's look at it like this, okay? Crawford started fighting at, 130? So just imagine, 130 pounds, 135, 140, 147. I think it's 135. Somebody, this clown said 130, but I could be wrong. But let's just say it doesn't matter. The fact that Crawford started at 130 or 135, went to 140, came to 147. He started in the 130s, okay? You look at Earl Spence. This man is a 147-pounder. Really should be fighting probably at 160. So who's the bigger man? The bigger man is Earl Spence. Okay? Now we get it. Terrence Crawford has some height. Terrence Crawford was a wrestler. He's naturally strong. That matters. But when you look at what Hank Lundy and Sean Porter were able to do to Terrence Crawford, you got to really start and think, how is Terrence Crawford going to handle Earl Spence? Earl Spence's pressure, power, and work rate. Because if Terrence Crawford couldn't handle Hank Lundy, hey, Terrence Crawford was losing that Hank Lundy fight. You guys understand? Hey, Terrence Crawford was losing to Sean Porter. And Sean Porter is that very physical, very come forward, very maul, high work rate. And it's an intelligent style of fighting, but he hasn't quite mastered it like Earl Spence has. Crawford is more just raw athleticism. In addition with the boxing IQ and everything, but it's a lot of athleticism. Well, Earl Spence, everything is textbook. Everything is, beautifully executed. He does leaves. He is vulnerable for some shots and counters he's been hit with, and if Crawford hits him, you got to expect Earl to feel it. But at the same time, although I'm picking Crawford, you got to really look at the difference in this in the weight and the size and who's the bigger and stronger man. So if a guy like Lundy could give Crawford those kind of problems, why can't Spence? Okay, we know Crawford can make adjustments. Like, this is something we know. But you really gotta, if Spence can make that fight physical and make that fight hard, although Crawford was able to get beyond Lundy and get beyond Porter, what is he gonna do to get beyond someone who's much bigger, stronger, much more physical and a better boxer than those guys? You see, especially in those first 4 rounds. Okay? Now, Terrence Crawford, he's not a guy who will just sit back and just try to box and move around and run. If you press Crawford, he's intelligent. He'll try to counter you. He will use his legs. He will use his ring generalship. But Terrence Crawford will stand and fight you. This is where someone's going to get hurt, either Crawford or Spence. If you watch Crawford's fights, if he's getting pressed, at some point, he will stop and he will fight. But watch his eyes. He is watching that opponent. When he's punching, when he's moving, he is watching the target. And he's seeing openings. He's seeing gaps in their defense. He's seeing the gaps in their offense. He's seeing everything. And next thing you know, bing, 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 bing. He touches them and diffuses them. Okay? So that's where we got to be real about what Earl Spence is bringing to the table. That crazy ass work rate behind the jab and just how physical he is. That's going to be a problem for Terrence Crawford. However, we know Terrence Crawford, his eyes, man, his eyes is the reason why he wins fights. If you watch, his eyes are wide open. He's seeing everything that's going on. And he's seeing those opportunities. And he's always in position to throw. And when he lets those hands go, bing, 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 things happen, okay? So I personally think that's what people should be talking about, is how the guy from 130-something pounds is coming up. Although he's grown into 147, still it's a guy from 130 who's coming up to bang against a guy who walked around with goddamn 200 pounds. So we're going to see what's going to happen with the contracts and rehydration clauses and everything else. I think these guys are prideful guys, so we're not going to see any of that. But you don't know, man. This whole negotiation thing and the postponement and delays and coming back to the drawing board, this wasn't solely because of money. It had a lot to do with it, but this wasn't solely because of money. I think some of y'all are going to be surprisingly shocked when they disclose what some of the hang-ups were and from which side was causing all the hang-ups. I think you'll see that it's probably both to be blamed here. I think it's a dual-hatted blame. But I really feel the major sticking point was Terrence Crawford in the money. And you could say, well, it's Earl Spence's fault because he didn't want to take a step back. So it's both of them. It's both of their fault, fighting over the damn money. And this is probably one of the more intriguing matchups this year, probably in the last 5 years. But what's funny about it, right, is Connor Benn and Eubank Jr. They have a fight coming up. They're fighting in October. And I'm telling you right now, when you look at Connor Benn and you look at Eubank Jr., you look at Terrence Crawford and you look at Earl Spence, which fight is the biggest fight? Is the bigger fight? Crawford and Spence, right? Those names are the bigger names, especially here stateside. But which ones do you think is going to generate the most money? I'm going to say Eubank Jr. and Connor Benn. They're going to generate the more views, and they're going to generate the more money. Just how it goes, man. Guys fighting out there, you got to understand the history, the parents. These two guys' style is catch weight, which kind of hurts Connor Benn because he has to come up 10 pounds. But it helps Connor Benn because Eubank Jr. has to come down to a weight that he's never made. Then it kind of hurts Connor Benn that Eubank Jr. can come in the ring heavier than 157. But then it helps Connor Benn because Eubank Jr. is going to have a rehydration clause to where he just can't come in the ring weighing what he wants. So when you look at the weight issue for Eubank Jr. and Connor Benn, the weight issue benefits Eubank Jr., but it also benefits Connor Benn. So to me, no one really benefits. Do you understand what I'm saying? It just depends on how you want to look at it. But it really depends on how you want to look at it. When you look at Connor Benn and Eubank Jr., and you take a look at Spence and Crawford, I'm not sure what. See, because this is the thing. Spence and Crawford are going to have guarantees. Don't be surprised if you see their guarantees at like $4 million a piece. Okay? Don't be surprised. Because we get it, Terrence Crawford made, 5 or 6 against Porter? But remember, Bob Arum was paying out of his own pocket. He wasn't making that kind of money on Crawford's events. So Bob Arum went in the red behind Crawford. Okay? So with this, don't be surprised if you see Crawford and Spence with like guaranteed purses of $4 million, and then with the pay-per-view sales and everything else after the pay-per-view sales, for them to say that fight purses could reach $20 million apiece. Okay, so that's why pay-per-view is important, because it can really help these networks pay these fighters the kind of money these fighters want. Now with Eubank Jr. and Connor Benn, those guys are gonna off the top make like $8 million each, $10 million each. Okay, because the money's there, the interest is there. They're gonna have the ticket sales. It's probably whenever the ticket go on sale, it'll be sold out in one day, I'm sure. So they're gonna get the guaranteed money. They're gonna get paid. But Crawford and Spence could make more because it's gonna be a pay-per-view event. I'm not sure if they've decided whether Benn and Eubank Jr. is gonna be a pay-per-view event over there in the UK. What I do know is they're gonna sell probably 100,000 tickets, and it's gonna be sold out, and it's gonna be crazy. All right. So 2 good fights coming up. Now, when you look at Eubank Jr., I expect him to outbox Connor Benn and win easily. But Connor Benn is going to come at him, and I just think Eubank Jr. is too big. Only way, and Eubank Jr. has always been in excellent shape, never had stamina issues. Although he has to make this weight cut, I don't believe Eubank Jr. will have any problems getting down to the weight and will have any issues with stamina. I do believe this thing keeps skipping. I apologize. I don't see Eubank Jr. having any issues with stamina, and I don't think when Conor Benn loses that his career will be adversely affected. What he's doing is daring to be great. What he's doing is that daring to be great, and I think he's going to be received in that manner, and I don't think he's going to adversely affect his career. I personally would like to see Conor Benn getting there with Boots Ennis or Keith Thurman or somebody like that. But, you can't make people fight you. And he needs to stay active, and he's trying to make as much money as possible. But that's what sucks about guys like Conor Benn at 147. A lot of guys just don't want to fight him, and they don't want to deal with Eddie Hearn. But Eddie Hearn's kind of created that kind of situation. PBC, Al Heyman, Floyd Mayweather, Leonard Ellaby, they don't want to do business with Eddie Hearn, man. His fighters are suffering because of him, and it sucks. But that being said, man, 2 good fights coming up. I don't even have anything else to say about Spence and Crawford. I've done so many videos on them guys. And let's just hope they can sort out the damn undercard so we can, at least get the fight. I hate to hear that the fight is being postponed for the undercard now, because guys on the undercard want more money or whatever the hell is. But I'm looking forward to it. But that being said, man, Crawford Spence, solid fight. I got Crawford winning, but if Spence can impose his size on him, Crawford's gonna have a tough time, because Hank Lundy did it, Sean Porter did it, and I know what Porter did with Spence, but Spence chose to fight that fight. Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, that's a good fight. I got Eubank Jr. outboxing him easily. You got Roy Jones in his corner. Y'all must have forgot. But Conor Benn is a pit bull, man, and if he can get at him and get shots off, he could get some success. But I just think he's just too small, man. A good big man always beats a good little man, and that's what this is. End of the story. So that being said, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Shout out to the veterans. 2 big fights this year. People thank the boxing gods that it's happening, and I am excited, looking forward to the fights. Y'all keep cool, and as always, I'm in the breeze.